All right, well, it's your first Ask Yo Aunteas on your way back. So what time is it?
Ask
Yo
your
Aunties. And this one says, "Hey, hey, aunties. In recent weeks, we've seen Dell and Sonya Curry, the parents of Steph Curry, get a divorce. And I've seen folks say that divorcing after 30 plus years of marriage over cheating is silly. I'm curious to know what you all think. Is cheating always a deal breaker, even after 3 plus decades of marriage, or is silly, or is it silly to separate?"
Wait a minute, who got divorced?
So, do you know who Steph Curry is, the basketball player?
He got divorced from his wife?
Not him. His parents got divorced, and they've been married 30 plus years.
Why do we care about his parents?
Well, because they've always kind of been at the games and they've kind of put his parents on this silver platter of marriage goals. Of course.
Oh. Wait.
I'm joking.
I can't.
No, here you go. Because Steph Curry and
he's loved.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here you go. I don't really recognize or remember Kobe Bryant or any other Black basketball player being in the news other than something scandalous.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's there, not taking away from his skills, give him all his shine, but now like his wife has become like a Chrissy Teigen in a sense, and now we're talking about his parents.
That's what
make the money. I hope they're all getting a paycheck.
And Del Curry used to be a decent player in the NBA as well. So I think that's why a lot of people. He's a former player himself, and then he's still out there and about. Like he's still visible. So I think that's why a lot of folks are still talking about it.
I would say, hell yeah, 30 years you cheat on me, and it's the first time too. I'm taking all of the aunties and I'm leaving.
Look, especially at that level, coins.
I just feel like what happened at 30 years that you didn't want to say, this is where I'm at. You don't slip in a booty hole. You don't just allow, like, even as queer people, if some man comes up on you and is like, hey, you wait a minute, like you cute. I could want it, but I gotta wait a minute.
Yeah.
So how you just get to this place having an affair and you cheated? Like that's premeditated. You felt that little bubble guts, like I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm gonna go ahead and push on. Very that. So you knew, take his money.
and it sounds like after I kind of read this question that both of them were kind of doing stuff,
dipping and dapping.
Oh, they both were fucking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, maybe he started dipping and doing it first. And she said, well, look, I'm going to keep this money and go get some too.
Maybe.
Okay, well, then stay together.
You
got to think about that life insurance plans and all
that part.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, after 30 years, I'll be like, whatever. I don't care. I mean, we didn't been through 30 plus years together. Why throw it all away? You know? And then, I mean, at that age, I don't want to die alone, y'all. Like, I just might ride this train to the final destination at this point. But like,
you Quad City DJs.
Look, I just. Can you imagine being that old? Like, how do you get back in the game? Like, you at somebody's church barbecue, you at somebody's funeral, like, because you ain't on these apps like these young folks. I mean, that's a whole different game. So,
well, I mean, if they cheating, clearly they still got it.
And he an old pimp, so he probably rolled up on it and said something real smooth.
Look, he probably got belted on his pager still, like just.
Dawon would roll up and say something real smooth to you. Dawon got that like he grew up around like old pimps that smell like cognac.
You want to go to Greece?
You want to go to Greece for 17 days? Opa, bitch.
Look, I might roll up like that.
What about you, Dawon? What you thinking?
Part of me is wondering, like, when are straight couples going to just open themselves up to the possibility that the relationship could be polyamorous? Because do you really want to be starting all over with somebody else with a whole new damn relationship? Yeah, why can't you just have somebody on the side and just have an arrangement? Like, if that's what you want, like you got your family over here, y'all stay together, and y'all don't have to like be in love with each other, but surely there's got to be some kind of like affection and care for one another, but like you starting this whole other relationship, now you out here single and 70. I mean,
that sounds like a show.
Why?
Single and 70. I can't.
Like, look, at the end of the day, like if it's a question of whether or not you just can't stand to be with that other person, then yeah, y'all shouldn't be together. But if it's just a matter of quote unquote cheating, like, oh, they cheated, like they had an affair, but they're still like they still like half foot in and half foot out or whatever, that's, in my opinion, that's repairable after 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Mo, I accidentally muted you. I just clicked on the screen.
But
there we go.
Both of them cheating?
And that's what it sounded like. After I kind of saw this headline and saw this question, I was like, oh, it does sound like both of them were. So, and I don't know who started what first, but
it sounds like they just both went out.
Does it matter though?
And that's the thing, and that's what I struggled with. Like, because like, I just feel like we put cheating as the gold star of just relationship failure. And to me, yes, there's something, at least to me, there's something behind even like the cheating. It's like, maybe that wasn't like the arrangement, and there's like the lying and things like that, and the feeling that you couldn't come to me and tell me that's what you wanted, or there was something off in the relationship. So that almost bothers me more than even the actual act.
The act of cheating.
But it's just like, I feel like we've just been so taught that cheating is it. And that's what we saw in straight relationships, and that like a lot of times we just don't, especially after 30 years, take a moment. And I don't know, maybe they did, but I would say after 30 years, take a moment and be like, okay, damn, like why? Let's ask why. What's the reason? Like, and kind of go from that route, and that cheating might not be the ultimate ending of a relationship, at least for me, especially after that long. And like, I mean, in my relationship, we've been together like 9.5 years, and I'm like, tried to put myself in it. I was like, even at 9.5 years, there's so much that we've built, so much that I enjoy about this human being, that yes, my feelings might be a little hurt, but I don't know if I would immediately think I'm divorcing Corey. And I would.
Right. I think that's a difference, though. I think a lot of times in media we grew up and in shows and like all the fantasies, you see general dating couples.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, like people who have been married and have children together and established a life. When someone's cheating on you, whatever, and you generally stay because you have built a life, you have the children, and in a lot of times, for at least Black women, they have no other resource, so they just stay and endure. If you do have your own resources, I think it's very much like you. I do agree. I think my biggest issue with cheating is there was something you needed that I couldn't give you, and you couldn't tell me that.
Right.
That's why I would want to end it, because the fact that we can't communicate.
Yeah, that's.
But I've also not like had what y'all had, so I'm very.
But no, that's very real though.
I mean, I would just say, like, after 30 years, especially if this is like the first time, and that's the other thing I want to know, like, is this the first time, or were there other in this 30 plus years?
I'm sure there's probably others.
Because if there's others, then I'm just like, okay, then this is a habitual cheater, and then someone's not getting out of it that they need in a relationship, so then go. But if it's the first time, though, after 30 plus years, I mean, I can forgive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still think I'll be with you though, Mo. Like, I would still, for some reason, I would just still feel like, what about me isn't allowing you to be so honest with me,
right?
And I would find myself then blaming myself and then taking on some of that responsibility.
And
I ain't trying to be in that place.
Yeah.
Why can't you just date other people? I mean, like, what? That's a lot of work.
It is.
You know what I mean?
To dismantle 30 years.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. Look. Just have a conversation with your wife or vice versa, and be like, you know what, let's just have an arrangement. You know, like you do your thing, just don't do it in a damn house. Don't be messy with it. You know, like you
don't bring nothing home. Don't bring nothing in the bedroom.
Don't be putting nobody up in no houses or whatever.
Like a couple that was dated and then you broke up during the pandemic and you're like, don't bring nobody home. Like we just paying the mortgage together.
But you know what? But at a certain point, some relationships turn into companionship. You know, and being a roommate, in my opinion, like there's a difference between a roommate that has no romantic connection to one another because y'all live in separate lives, you know, versus companionship where you actually have feelings and affection for one another, but you have arrangements around, you know, some of your sexual needs, which is the purpose for, you know, large purpose for cheating. Now, unless it's something completely different, like they found somebody and they fell in love with somebody else, that's a whole different story. But if it's just like, you know, you want to get your rocks off or whatever, like, you know, why break up the kingdom? Come on now, just stay together and have a couple of, you know, like cottages and, you know, like, you know, do the milkmaid.
International and said cottages.
Look.
I do think, okay, also, what about this? Because every affair is not sexual. That's true. There are emotional affairs. And I remember when I was leading like ex-gay interrelationship history, like healing or whatever. And I will never forget this lady. She confessed that like her husband cheated on her with another woman emotionally. And she said that broke her. She said, this is what her words are. She said, I could have handled the fact that he had sex because that's an action. It was boom, done. But the fact that he had this emotional connection with this other woman, she said that is the thing that completely broke me because I thought he had that with me.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that.
Yeah,
that's and maybe there's part of that in this cheat. Yeah, I mean, and it's not, and obviously a lot of times out here we try to wrap it up in like the little 15-20 minute segment, and it's a little deeper and more complex than that. We completely are aware of that. But yeah, a lot of times it is easier to separate the physical and the emotion. Like once it gets to that emotional setback, you're like, damn, like I invested all these emotions and that wasn't enough. And that could, but even for me, I'm just like, you know what? Okay, the emotional part, okay, I'm definitely done then. And I can see that. But I don't know if I would ever allow someone to break me. Like even being married, I don't think, if Corey emotionally fell in love with someone else, I would be upset. Don't get me wrong, because I adore him and I love him with all of my heart.
Breaking dishes in the
Riri, Opa, dishes. That's an underrated Riri song, by the way. But I don't know what it is. Maybe I've just read and seen so many situations out there that I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm so like, I am never gonna let a human being break me emotionally. And maybe that's still maybe a wall, now that I'm talking out loud now, that a wall maybe I still have up or something. I don't know. But I know that's the one thing I ain't gonna let nobody do. Cheat on me, okay. Physically, I'll come to the conclusion that I need for my damn self.
Right.
The emotion a lot of times is a lot harder for a lot of folks because you invest so much of yourself in relationships. But you ain't gonna do that to me. Oh no, you ain't gonna get me, or I'm not gonna let you see that you got me either. Or you know, maybe that's what it is.
I do also feel like we put a lot of humans in a box. Like, you know, like my grandfather on my mother's side had like 3 or 4 different whole ass families outside of like my grandmother, my mother's mother. At the same damn time.
Yeah, man.
You know, so like, but that's not uncommon in a lot of cultures, in a lot of settings. You know, so like if we know that, and it's not like my grandfather on my mother's side didn't love those women. He did.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about sex. Because he had full-on relationships with them. And there are a lot of cultures where you see that happening. And what that says to me is just that there are some people who are just built differently. You know, their capacity to show love for other people it's not dependent on what they're showing to one person, but whether the person that's getting that love and with that person who has the capacity to love a whole bunch of other people is comfortable with that, that's a totally different conversation. So like, I do feel like we bucket relationships like it has to be kind of like a one way.
Yeah.
And I would love to see the dialogue shift out of that, where we give people permission to like, there are some people that are capable of loving more than one person at the same damn time.
Right.
And it's
but
okay
I
that
think
it's
you
same
have
for
to
you.
go into that situation knowing that you are not going to be the only one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get into a lot of relationships codependent, needing something instead of coming into a relationship whole.
That's
so
a
you're
whole
like,
word.
I need you. I So it makes sense.
Yep.
This is the other thing I wanted to say. Have y'all seen, I've seen this a lot. I saw this one guy put a video out and he was like, I just want to give y'all some signs and let y'all know that the pussy is not y'all. It's just your turn. And then this lady, yes. And then I heard this lady, she said, I'm going to help somebody out when it comes to cheating. She says, we get all distraught when someone cheats on us because we feel like we own them, like they are our possession, like they're our property.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't own anyone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that you're like, this person's mine, how did you buy them? Did you like, you know what I mean? So how do
Right.
you indicate what they're going to do? Now, did they disrespect you? Yes.
Right.
But they're not yours for you to hold them as your mine. You cannot do X, Y, and Z. That's really crazy.
That's a word.
And I think I've always, and I don't know where it's come from because I don't think that's my parents' situation, not that I know of. But and I think that's where I was kind of hinting at, like just even the emotional part is just like I just know like at least the way my brain's set up, I'm aware that Corey's human, if that makes sense, and that he might miss it, and I might misstep. Like, and I leave at least room in my mind, and this is 9.5 years talking now. This is day one. I haven't always been this way, but I've at least left room to know that might be a potential because people are getting like the divorce rate is high. Like, at least the scholar part of my brain is just like, okay, Kerel, like clearly. This is just a human thing that we just suck at being faithful, telling the truth, and making sure everyone else is good. We're a selfish being. And I think I always just kind of had that in the back of my head. And again, it doesn't mean I won't feel disrespected. It won't mean that I won't leave. Like, I could be like, you know what? I don't want that. Mm-hmm. But I'm aware, and I at least try. And I'm saying this now, like, Lord forbid something to happen, but like at least try to be aware that at least we're gonna have the conversation as to why. Then I can conclude what I need to conclude for myself, one way or the other.
I will say though, it's easier to. I truly do feel it's easier to say than it is to do because we all know, like, when someone disrespects you, it's easy to get pulled out of character and do what you're emotionally, like what you mentally think or is the right thing to do, but you're like, oh no, but the disrespect alone has me out of character.
It's true.
Right. So I do want to remind the community. I want the community to be aware, that I understand that in the moment when you feel disrespected, you say, fuck you, I'm done.
Absolutely.
And then you do find sometimes that people get back together because they take a minute to calm down, and they're able to look at it, clearly without that anger, alone. But I mean, everyone got a different breaking point too. Some people can handle it, some people don't give a fuck, some people do give a fuck. It really, like, I mean, honestly, people just it's. I think it's different for each person. I don't think there's one answer, for a question like this. It really just
for
depends
30 years.
on.
But after 30 years, I'm like,
I know
damn.
people who just, I don't know.
And it could be 30 years. That was your breaking point. You're like, motherfuck this human being.
Like,
I don't been through some shit.
30 years of you leaving the cap off the milk
Right.
and your socks on the floor.
Like,
And then on top of
this
all
human
that,
being.
you gonna do this? No,
It's
nigga,
like,
you gotta
bitch,
go.
I'm out.
You gotta go.
I'm
bro.
out. So true. Well, community, continue to send your Ask Yo Aunteas questions at ay@minorityareport.com or DM us. We've gotten some new ones in the last few weeks here, so we'll get to those as soon as we can. But we love these questions, and continue to send them in.